Regional forms give Pokemon a new lease on life while also maintaining the overall identity of the design. Pokemon like Alola Marowak, Hisui Arcanine, and Galarian Moltres have effectively been nostalgia bait while also just being whole new Pokemon which actually succeed in competitive formats by being designed with previous power creep in mind. But which regional forms are the best? In this week's edition of Moxie Boosted Tier Slap, we're going to be ranking the Pokemon based on how good they are in competitive play. Let's just get right into it. If you guys enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, check out the Patreon, become a YouTube channel member, hype the video, all of that. And hey, you definitely want to subscribe because at 300,000 subscribers, I'll be ranking every bench in Lumiose City. Let's just begin. It feels wrong placing Stunfisk at the very bottom of the tier list, especially with Alolan Raticate being an option for this spot, but I feel the need to put Stunfisk down here almost entirely due to the fact that this Pokemon struggles to accomplish like anything, which is really surprising because it actually has a pretty great defensive type in Ground Steel. The issue arises with its stats and its moves and its bulk, but its bulk is somewhat passable, just nothing special with 109 HP, 99 defense, and 84 special defense, but offensively it just can't manage to accomplish anything off of its really bad 81 attack stat, with no recovery options outside of Pain Split, which doesn't heal much as Stunfisk has 109 HP. It struggles to have much longevity. It's more or less just left flopping around and doing nothing. It doesn't even have any good Steel-type moves, with its best physical Steel-type attack being the 65 base power Metal Claw. Above all else though, what really frustrates me about Galarian Stunfisk is its ability Mimicry, which would be a solid ability on like any other Pokemon, but it's practically useless on Stunfisk. Mimicry causes Stunfisk to change its type to whatever type the terrain is on the field. Combining this with Terrain Pulse, which changes type with terrain as well, it would actually make for a pretty powerful combo, but with only 66 special attack, it's among the weakest Terrain Pulse users, and on top of that, it has like the worst signature move of all time, with Snap Trap being a 35 base power grass type clone of Wrap. How is the only user of Snap Trap not even a grass type? Like, I get we could give it to Carnivine, but do you expect me to set up grassy terrain to boost the power of this move from 35 to 68? I mean, yeah, that's not awful, but it's a lot of work for just a spicy Wrap. Absolute bottom of the barrel, because he just kind of fits neatly down there if you really look at his shape. Okay, here's Alolan Raticate. I'd call this thing a nothing burger, but there have certainly been burgers in this man's past, much like myself. As we can see with its now incredible 75 HP stat, is this not supposed to be the fat wall Raticate? That is not fat Pokemon numbers. These are not Snorlax or Greedent bulk. This is just like an out of shape Raticate. Due to its just underwhelming bulk, I can't even make much use of its abilities Gluttony or Thick Fat, which are mostly defensive tools, leaving it stuck as a Hustle user. Hustle is great and all on the right Pokemon, but a 50% boost to attack in exchange for having its accuracy cut to 80% is a really big gamble. And that's a Hustle boost to a just 71 base attack stat. Do its Scarf or Choice Band double edges hurt? Oh yeah, but there's so many other Pokemon that can actually do this, but just much better. Like literally any normal type with an attack stat over 100. I don't know, at least Biggie Cheese here gets knockoff. This channel is partnered with Gamersupps. If you want to support my work and get great tasting drinks, you can order Gamersupps through my link in the description down below or with code MoxieBoosted at checkout for 10% off. Gamersupps is a caffeinated product that I recommend only to my 18+ viewers, but my link will send you to their caffeine-free product section just in case. Every product purchased through my link supports my channel financially, so I'd really appreciate the support. Now back to the video. Did you know that Alolan Dugtrio has access to the ability Sand Veil? I guess that means that they can bob, weave, and mullet. If there's a third hairstyle that implies dodging, just let me know in the comment section below. This Pokemon is really goofy because it's a fast Steel-type attacker that was introduced in Gen 7, the Fairy-type generation, the one dominated by the Tapus, and yet it can hardly manage to KO the ground-weak Tapu Koko and the steel-weak Tapu Lele. Why? Because not only does it have 100 attack, but its speed got reduced from 120 to 110. What's with Alola and making fake bulky Pokemon? That defense buff is not doing anything when Alolan Dugtrio has 35 base HP. It really just doesn't get much lower than that. Wait, fade. Bob, weave, and fade. Okay, got it. Galarian Rapidash is a strange case for F tier because all things considered, it's like among the least offensive of the low tier regional forms, but it just like doesn't do anything. Galarian Rapidash is like a one-use kitchen gadget. You're gonna try it out once and then never need it as long as you live. Who needs a quail egg opener? I don't even eat quail eggs. Similarly, who needs an ability that prevents your team from getting poisoned? Well, actually with the way Dondozo teams ended up in the long run, this ability could have been fairly useful in Gen 9, but an ability that prevents poison on a fairy type? Brother, the poison chip damage from Sludge Bomb is not the issue, you're fainting from the attack. 105 base speed is pretty solid in Galar and Rapidash, but with just 100 attack, the list of Pokemon that is going to be able to deal with is fairly limited. It's a hard counter to Urshifu's Single Strike, but so is like literally every fairy over 97 speed, so yeah, it's just kind of a do-nothing Pokemon. I feel like this is at least the 5th time I've had to talk about Hisui and Avalugg on my channel, and what causes it to fail, but I can just give the Spark Notes version. No John Pokemon, no James Freak. It is not a defensive Pokemon if it has 2 times 4 weaknesses. Hisui and Avalugg boast massive defense and an impressive attack stat, but with such an awful defensive typing and a special defense stat so low that it drops to a neutral special move, it's just going to fail every single time to accomplish basically anything. Also, why did it get faster? The whole point was that base Avalugg underspeeds Amoonguss, so why can't this one? Behold, a bomb with a mustache. Alolan Golem is identical to Golem stat-wise, but this one is an electric type and turns normal moves into electric types due to its ability Galvanize. For what purpose? Well, to blow itself up, of course. Any match where Alolan Golem lasts more than a single turn is an anomaly. It's the strongest explosion user in the game, and it makes that its whole personality. Don't invite this guy to hang out, he's just gonna talk about that one time he was on a team with Landorus. In D tier, we have Runerigus. You know, I actually kind of like Runerigus, even though whenever I say its name, it feels like I have a mouthful of peanut butter, so we're going to call him Runerigus. Runerigus is just a physical, partially ground-type Cofagrigus. Something that sounds interesting, but is mostly relegated to meme teams and gimmicks. Its ability is also just slightly different from Cofagrigus' Mummy, where Mummy spreads like a virus to every Pokemon that it touches. Runerigus' Wandering Spirit just causes the user to swap abilities with the Pokemon who makes contact with it. Basically, it's a contact-activated skill swap, which is why this Pokemon is almost always paired with Pokemon like Regigigas or Slacking, who want their detrimental abilities gone. But when another Galarian form much further up on this list is also well known for pairing with those Pokemon, it just leaves Runerigus feeling extremely underwhelming. Yet another gimmick team Pokemon, Perrserker is known for doing exactly one thing. While it has some fairly acceptable stats in 110 attack with okay physical bulk and access to the move Fake Out, what it's mostly used for is its ability Steely Spirit, which basically causes it and its allies to have a 50% boost to the power of their Steel type attacks. Enter Specs Golden Go. Take a free turn 1 KO and win. Unless your opponent sees it coming from a mile away on Team Preview and shuts that down right away. Just a really underwhelming Pokemon, all things considered. Like, Perrserker hits hard on its own with Steely Spirit, but it's just barely not hitting hard enough to take KOs, so it leaves it really low tier. Dear Tauros Combat Breed. Literally every other Tauros is also fighting type, so I don't know who you're fooling with that name. Tauros Combat Breed is just a lesser Aqua or Blaze breed. Like, it's just them without the additional typing and stab. And it never even really runs its signature move of Raging Bull, which breaks screens because Close Combat is just a much better move. The other forms get to break screens with a 90 base power Water or Fire move, and that's a pretty cool niche, but Tauros Combat Breed just gets like spicy Brick Break. Intimidate is still a great ability though, so I can't place it any lower than this. Cursola had all the potential in the world, but its super limited options are what really kept it from achieving success. Like, it's got great coverage in Scald, Ice Beam, and Earth Power, but it's limited in different ways. You're telling me we got a specially bulky, pure Ghost type with 145 base special attack and a low speed stat, and it doesn't learn Trick Room. Don't get me wrong, another Pokemon could set up Trick Room for Cursola, but not having the option is just really limiting, and on top of that, it's got no spread moves to speak of, and its only ability that doesn't contradict its whole design is Perish Body, an ability which causes all Pokemon on the field, including itself, to have Perish Song Timer activate on them if this Pokemon gets hit by a contact move. That effectively just means throwing all setup out the window, so Calm Mind isn't ever worth it. Why buff stats if you're just gonna have to switch out no matter what? About as D tier as it gets. You know, in most situations, becoming a dragon is seen as somewhat of an upgrade. Just look at Jake Long, but not in Exeggutor's case. Alolan Exeggutor's stats are fairly impressive, with it being nearly identical to base Exeggutor stats, only that it loses 10 speed to uselessly place them in its attack stat. Dropping the Psychic type for Dragon, however, is kind of a downgrade, because rather than having a solid offensive typing that allows for it to spam Expanding Force and hit more Pokemon for super effective damage, it gains the Dragon typing, which is just typically solid defensively, but is actually a pretty poor defensive type when it's paired with Grass. And even offensively, Dragon is pretty underwhelming. It's neutral against everything but 2 types. I mean, it's still got access to Calm Mind and Leech Seed, so you can kind of make a Temu Raging Bolt if you try hard enough, but it's not quite pulling its weight in a match when non-stab Icy Wind could send this guy to the ER. In all honesty, Hisui and Electrode is only high up on this list because it has 150 base speed and Electroweb, with better coverage options than its base form. Like, I know that's not much, but in lower power formats, these are actually pretty useful tools. Hisui and Electrode's like that one super tall but not very athletic person that makes the basketball team, because even though they can't move super well with the ball, you can just pass it to them for free layups. Alolan Sandslash is what we call a potential mon around here. Its stats are identical to base Sandslash, only this guy is an Ice Steel type that gets double speed in snow instead of double speed in sand. It's literally just Sandslash but cold. It had some fringe usage in early VGC 2017, and it could get some really solid knockouts with Ground EMZ and its stab moves, but as soon as Incineroar got Intimidate, we stopped seeing this guy entirely. And things are only getting harder and harder for it as time goes on, as the speed tiers get higher and higher. Like, it didn't need to invest nearly as much speed back in 2017, but its bulk is getting lower and lower the more it needs to crank up that speed to outrun Pokemon like Dragapult. Hisui and Decidueye had exactly 4 weeks where it was viable, but those 4 weeks are much more than most Pokemon below on this list can boast. At the start of Reg H, where all legendary Pokemon were banned, everyone kinda knew that Golden was about to be top dog in the format. A Ghost Steel type with a super powerful Steel spread move. How does one deal with that, especially when they can pair that Ghost Steel type with Incineroar to keep it protected? Well, Hisui and Decidueye was a Pokemon who could hypothetically deal with both of these Pokemon. Thanks to its new fighting type and access to the ability Scrappy, it can not only avoid Intimidate attack drops, but it can also deal massive damage to Golden with close combat, since Scrappy lets it ignore Ghost type's fighting type immunity. Only Flamigo could also do this, and it was just much better at the job. It had a higher attack stat, higher speed, and a better typing and pure fighting, which left it with less weaknesses. Like, Decidueye was only used for style points, because let's face it, he looks super cool, but a low 60 base speed and fairly unimpressive bulk leave it lacking in most situations. Hisui and Braviary is the only Pokemon in the game who can click Tinted Lens Expanding Force. Does it have to run an Iron Ball to do this because it's a flying type and doesn't touch the psychic terrain on the ground? Yes, but it was going to be a Trick Room Pokemon anyways, so let's just let it have this one W. It's the best Pokemon in D tier. I don't care how mediocre that special attack stat is, ignoring resistances with the most broken psychic move in the game is just good enough of a gimmick for me to rank it above everything else so far. Also, it just looks really cool, so... Starting out C tier with Galarian Corsola, which can be best described as a noob trap. Basically, everyone learns what Eviolite is, and rather than choosing a reasonable Eviolite user like Porygon 2, they opt for the dead Coral. Corsola does have some impressive stats after the Eviolite boost, but when its only recovery move is Strength Sap, it's pretty easy to play around. Just use a special attacker and that recovery isn't taking it very far. Basically, it can be an effective wall in the right conditions, but most of the time it's just going to be outclassed by other Pokemon. Also, once again, Trick Room. Dusclops just clears because it doesn't get Trick Room. Alolan Raichu has some fairly impressive stats, with it gaining 5 extra points in its special attack stat at the cost of its physical attack. And having double speed as long as Electric Train is active due to Surge Surfer is great and all, but it was kind of built with Z moves in mind, so it just has a hard time hitting hard enough with 95 special attack and Terrain boosting it, especially since Terrain is only 1.3 in this generation. Can it also function well in Psychic Terrain? Yeah, and Expanding Force is great and all, but there's tons of great Expanding Force users with far higher special attack stats. He also used to have Rising Voltage, which they got rid of that too, so he just keeps getting cool tools and then losing them. Mr. Rime and Galarian Mr. Mime. We're just going to talk about these two in one go because Mr. Rime and Mr. Mime are so close in functionality that the distinction more or less doesn't matter, and it's kind of just up to your discretion. Both these Pokemon are Ice Psychic type, with access to Fake Out, Trick Room, and this neat little ability called Screen Cleaner, meaning that it wipes away Reflect, Light Screen, and Auroraville upon switching in. Mr. Mime will tend to run Eviolite for better bulk overall, and Mr. Rime likes Focus Sash to let it live an extra turn, while having a higher special attack stat. They both want to just be Ice-type fake-out users with a cool ability, but the need for that niche to be filled is so rare that they're just kind of like fine, very rare mid-tiers. Not much to talk about here. Sirfetchd kind of falls in the same camp as Hisui and Decidueye, unfortunately. It's just kind of there, only as a pure fighting type, it has less weaknesses overall. It's also got a much higher attack stat at 135, and with access to the move First Impression and decent critical hit sets, while also ignoring Intimidate and hitting ghost types, it's pretty okay at being a fighting type, but by no means is it even close to being a top tier. Obstagoon feels like it should be better. You're telling me that we got a third stage to Zigzagoon and it has 95 speed, good bulk, access to knockoff, and Defiant? It's gotta be solid. Alternatively, it could run Guts, Flame Orb, and have Stab on Facade. What could possibly hold this guy back? It's got 90 attack. Moving on. Galarian, Slowking, and Slowbro will also be ranked together because it's kind of a choose your flavor situation. Both are 30 base speed, bulky, poison, psychic Pokemon that want Trick Room up. Slowbro is a mixed attacker with access to Shell Sidearm, a move which determines if it's special or physical, depending on which would do more damage in that situation. And Slowking is basically the same thing, but a dedicated special attacker with Eerie Spell, a move which lowers the PP of the move the target last used. As you can tell by my descriptions, these are both fairly okay Pokemon that are just not in very high demand, I guess, right in the middle of the pack on this tier list. Hisui and Qwilfish gets knocked down a few points because U should always follow Q in a word, and I feel like that W is purposely taunting me. It's trying to skirt the rules. Yeah, I mean, it's an Eviolite user. Hisui and Qwilfish has Intimidate, pretty solid speed, and one weakness, yet no one really uses it, and that mostly comes down to the fact that Overqwil can do most of what Qwilfish wants to do with comparable bulk and a much higher attack stat. It's a far less passive option to Hisui and Qwilfish, and even then, Overqwil isn't that great. Okay, so remember how I said Hisui and Braviary could use Iron Ball Expanding Force? Well, this guy can too, and it's also got access to competitive, so Incineroar better watch out. Any stat drop will double Galar and Articuno special attack stat instantly. That being said, it's not super great, and it's definitely the weakest of the Galarian birds. By the way, Freezing Glare has never frozen anything, and you can't convince me otherwise. That move is just a scam. Hisui and Samurott is basically what happens when you have a fan buff Samurott. Gaining the Dark type does wonders for it, and making it a physical attacker with sharpness to boost the power of Aqua Cutter and Night Slash is diabolical. Only this thing doesn't actually use Night Slash. It uses the move Ceaseless Edge, a 65 base power Dark type move which sets up spikes and is boosted by sharpness as well. Hisui and Samurott's one claim to fame is the fact that it's just a hard counter to Gholdengo and even has a solid Incineroar matchup, but it's more or less a potential mon than anything if we're being real. Not many great tournament finishes to its name, so it just sits at the top of C tier. In B tier, we start off with Alolan Persian, which is a deceptively good Pokemon. Coming in at the bottom of this tier, it's obviously decent, but it's fallen off from its glory days in Gen 7. Its ability Fur Coat combined with its high speed and dark typing makes it quite the solid support option. Fake Out, Icy Wind, Foul Play, and even Quash were viable moves on this Pokemon, and it went on to place high at the World Championships and even win a regional on Jamie Boyd's team. Also, it just used to crash the game with Z Parting Shot, so that's kind of sick. We're just going to go ahead and give it aura points for that. So Tauros Aqua Breed actually won the first Scarlet and Violet Regional, and this could be mostly due to the low power level of the format, but Tauros' bulk, solid typing, access to Intimidate, and extra stab options like Wave Crash and Aqua Jet made it a very good pick for the format. It's mostly outclassed, but even in Regulation F, you'll occasionally see someone rocking Tauros. It's a very team-dependent Pokemon, but it's fairly reliable. Basculegion Female isn't nearly as strong as Basculegion Male, mostly due to the fact that it's a special attacker. So its attacks are just naturally either weaker or less reliable, since if it goes for a physical attack, it's not going to be doing as much, and Hydro Pump just isn't really accurate. Obviously, it can still use Last Respects with its base 92 attack, but that's mostly just due to the move itself being busted than it having the stats to back it up. Not many people will opt for running it outside of a Draft League format, but it's certainly got the power to back up being this high on the tier list. Overqwil is not a very notable Pokemon overall, but its utility is undeniable. It's got great bulk, Intimidate, access to Taunt, Icy Wind, and Haze to let it be a niche pick in Reg G, and it even managed to finish top 8 at the 2024 North American International Championships. It's only got one weakness, so we kind of have to give it its flowers here. Okay, I'm getting tired of describing Tauros and saying the phrase Great Bulk and Intimidate, so just know that this one's like the others, but with Will-O-Wisp, and it doesn't drop to Fairy types immediately. Hisui and Goodra is without a doubt the single most sauceless Pokemon on this list, but it's undeniably solid. It's got incredible special bulk combined with Dragon Steel typing, and it's got a really annoying Iron Defense body press set, which makes it really difficult to play against unless you're specifically prepped for it. Like, they managed to build this Pokemon in the perfect way to annoy literally everyone. I'm not exactly pro Urshifu, but I think personally critting this thing would be okay. But no. Shell Armor just says no crits. You have to use Haze, Sacred Sword, or swing as hard as you can with a special attacking move, or God forbid, just timer stall them. Alolan Muk used to be the underrated Tapu Killer of 2017, but it's since been left as a shell of its former self, having only one weakness, and tools like Knockoff, Haze, and Toxic Spikes and plenty of other busted options makes it a Pokemon with one of the highest potentials for success. But as of late, it's just been relegated to an evasion gimmick next to Smeargle of all Pokemon, where it'll use Power of Alchemy to copy Smeargle's ability after Smeargle faints, giving it Moody, and then using Minimize to boost its evasion and just be annoying and then Toxic Stall you. It's basically just a ladder warrior at this point, and I'm holding out hope that the right format will come around for it because it's still got all those incredible tools that it can use to succeed. Clodsire is a pretty useful Pokemon when you get down to it. Its overall bulk is really solid in 130 HP, 60 defense, and 100 special defense, and Ground Poison is a pretty good defensive typing, especially when you run it with Water Absorb as its ability. Although Clodsire will almost always run Unaware instead to tank hits from boosted opponents by ignoring those stat boosts. Yawn can provide decent support to teams, and the ability to do well into Pokemon like Incineroar, Goldengo, and even Dondozo sometimes makes it a really solid Pokemon to sit right in the middle of this list. Alright, so Hisui and Zoroark is one of my favorites on this list because it's currently the 5th Pokemon in the Marco said it was bad in the video, then it won the next event club. And in all honesty, Hisui and Zoroark wouldn't be nearly as good if it weren't for the existence of Blood Moon Ursaluna specifically. Another Pokemon who wants to Terra Normal and spam Hyper Voice. But the whole deal with Hisui and Zoroark is that it wants to pretend to be a slow Hyper Voice user like that, and then actually be the one to move at the top of the turn order to get free KOs when the opponent doesn't expect it. It's a direct upgrade to base Zoroark due to it being a partial ghost typing and making it fake out immune, but obviously it's quite useful. If Blood Moon Ursaluna didn't exist, the list of effective targets for Illusion would be kinda small though. It can't fake being an Incineroar, a Rillaboom, or any Paradox or Ruin Pokemon due to the fact that they all have abilities which are activated in some way that the opponent can see. Like, this guy is a gimmick Pokemon, but it's certainly like the best gimmick Pokemon. Starting off A tier with Galarian Darmanitan. Okay, so imagine if a gorilla had a sledgehammer, and that's basically what we're dealing with here. Gorilla Tactics being Choice Band the ability makes it so there's literally no reason not to run Choice Band the item. That's a 2.25 times multiplier on any physical attack this guy uses off of its 140 base attack stat. I don't care if it's mostly a singles Pokemon, so is Dracovish, and this guy is basically just the other Dracovish. Alolan Marowak is actually a really solid Pokemon. It basically took all the issues with regular Marowak and fixed them by giving it a better typing. Base Marowak could hold the Thick Club to double its attack and make its Earthquakes devastating, and Alolan Marowak can do the same, only as a Fire Ghost type, it can click Stab Flare Blitz and probably one-shot something. Shadowbone was also pretty solid stab, but nowadays it's also got access to Poltergeist, so choose your favorite between the two. And the ability Lightning Rod makes it a really great partner to plenty of Pokemon. Due to its ability to redirect Electric-type moves into itself, it was a really solid counter to Tapu Koko in 2017, and even though it didn't do much in Gen 8, I'm hopeful for it to remain strong in Gen 10 and Pokemon Champions. Galarian Zapdos is more or less a one-trick pony, or bird, I don't know. The fact of the matter is, it single-handedly defeats the Incineroar, Urshifu, and Rillaboom trio that's dominated competitive Pokemon for the past 2 generations, although it's not a super common pick due to its frailty and need to run recoil moves to have solid damage output. It kind of makes it a little bit of a liability at times. That being said, Defiant is an incredible ability that makes it a threatening lead into Incineroar, Landorus, and other Intimidators. It's currently most well known for being a Scarf coaching Pokemon next to Ting-Lu and other physical attackers in Regulation F, and it's seen very solid success in that role. It's likely a Pokemon that will just continue to age very well. Much like Galarian Zapdos, Galarian Moltres kinda ebbs and flows in viability over time. But Moltres tends to succeed more overall due to its great bulk and typing. Having access to the move Nasty Plot, the ability Berserk, and a special attacking Dark Rock Slide in the move Fiery Wrath makes it not only strong, but a frustrating Pokemon to play against. It's even been able to make use of Foul Play with Black Glasses to sort of function as a mini Yveltal in Regulation G. Moltres isn't the most consistent Pokemon overall, but it's certainly carved out its own little niche in VGC, and it'll remain a fixture of the game for years to come. Also, it's just a hard counter to Calyrex Shadow, so, you know. I'm not gonna lie, there's not much to say here other than Hisui and Lilligant is a direct upgrade to base Lilligant. It's just a physical attacking version with close combat to deal with Incineroar, which is super important, obviously, as Incineroar is one of the few Pokemon that could deal with After You Eruption next to Drought Torkoal. Hisui and Lilligant only ever clicks After You or Sleep Powder, but it's the best at this job and it's hard to deny that, so it's gonna end up really high on this list. It's kind of like a hammer. As simple as it is, I wouldn't pick anything other than a hammer to drive nails into a wall. Speaking of hammers, Hisui and Typhlosion is kind of in the same boat. It's a Ghost Fire type with access to Eruption, not being able to fake out flinch the Eruption user with a 95 base speed stat and 119 special attack stat is pretty terrifying, especially in Gen 9 where Sun is everywhere, and it can even terrestrialize into a Fire type for extra damage on top. This thing is a hammer, and the whole other team is just nails. Galarian Weezing sits at the top of A tier because it's frankly the first meta-warping Pokemon to be a regional form. Now, this doesn't have to do with its stats or its additional fairy typing, but its ability. No, not that one, shockingly enough. Neutralizing Gas turns off all Pokemon's abilities except for the ones that cost money. This allows for Weezing to enable Pokemon like Regigigas or Slacking to become demons in VGC, but most annoying of all, it lets the user run Ability Shield on Pokemon like Incineroar to play the game in an environment that's completely alien to the opponent. What do you mean Incineroar can intimidate King Gambit, and King Gambit doesn't just get an attack boost? Why can it Parting Shot my Dragapult even though it's Clear Body? Using Weezing straight up feels like using a domain expansion in like JJK, I swear. Due to it fundamentally changing the game whenever it appears, it kind of just has to be on the top of A tier. Starting off S tier with Basculegion Male. Behold, the cleanup crew, and also, frankly, the mess maker. Basculegion was genetically engineered in a lab to be a total freak on the battlefield. It's a Ghost Water type with adaptability, a passable speed stat, and 112 base attack. Now, that attack stat sounds unimpressive until you realize it's going to be throwing out adaptability rain-boosted wave crashes to one-shot practically anything in front of it, and it gets scarier as the game goes on, because it's a comeback Pokemon. Its move Last Respects starts off at 50 power, and then gains 50 power for each teammate that's fainted. This means that in a 1v1 endgame situation against Basculegion, practically nothing is surviving the hit. It's throwing out a 300 base power Ghost type attack against anything it sees. It's won regionals, and it was a staple of Regulation H, so it's going to be our first S tier pick. Alola Ninetales is unique on this list because it's not necessarily a broken Pokemon like the other S tiers, but it's more here due to its undeniable utility. It's a Fairy Ice type with 109 base speed and access to Snow Warning. Being able to set up Aurora Veil for its team while becoming deceptively bulky and snow on top of that is a real treat for its users. And being able to make use of Icy Wind speed control with Encore tech makes it a very strong Pokemon overall. Like, its Blizzards aren't dealing a lot of damage off of its low special attack stat, but it's probably the greatest team player on this list and is really deserving of S tier. I personally hate the way that Sneasler is designed from a gameplay perspective. Fake Out, stupidly high speed, a great attack stat, and poison fighting stab options. It has Unburdened sets, it can run with Psychic Seed to outrun literally everything in the game, and its move pool is stupidly deep. Why does it learn all these moves? Why does it get Rock Slide? I haven't even gotten to Dire Claw yet, which is basically just a status slot machine. The fact that this Pokemon can win a game fair and square off of its amazing traits, and if all else fails, win in the most cheating way possible off of a sleep chance is just really stupid. This thing was the face of Regulation H VGC, being arguably more iconic to the format than Goldengo. And the only reason I'm not putting it at the top of this list is spite. I may not be able to choose when I get Dire Claw slept, but I choose where you go on this list, Sneasler, and it's second place. Hisui and Arcanine is topping off this list, partially due to the fact that I hate Sneasler, and partially due to the fact that it's got every trait that you'd want out of a Pokemon. It's a direct upgrade to Arcanine with higher attack and the addition of the Rock type. Intimidate lets it support a team along with tech options like Snarl and Will-O-Wisp, decreasing the damage output of the opponents. But despite all those great support tools, it's mostly known for its excellent burst damage options. Banded Extreme Speed hits like a truck, Flare Blitz hits like a monster truck, and Head Smash hits like whatever took out the dinosaurs. It's even got the option to just spam Rock Slide and win from Flinch Cheese. Is it weak to a lot of things? Yes, but it just doesn't really matter when it's moving first and taking KOs. This is like the perfect combination of team player and offensive threat. It's going to be at the top of S tier for my rankings. Okay, so I'm doing this in post because my editor has informed me that by my standard of including Pokemon like Basculegion and Sneasler in this video, I'm kind of obligated to include Ursaluna as well. A Pokemon which is so far above the rest of the Pokemon on this list that I'm going to be forced to give both forms a tie for first place in the new Bear tier, just above S. Ursaluna and Ursaluna Blood Moon are two Pokemon which kind of defy their normal typings. The normal type is meant to be a sort of run-of-the-mill whatever type that isn't super effective into anything, but is neutral against basically everything. The only types that do well defensively into normal types are Ghost types, which are completely immune to normal type moves, and Rock and Steel types, which both resist it. The reason Ursaluna is so busted despite having the definitive whatever type is the fact that they just hit so hard that the disadvantages of the normal type don't matter. Beginning with base Ursaluna, we have a normal ground Pokemon with the most min-max stats we've seen so far in the franchise. We're talking a massive 130 base HP stat, flanked by 105 defense and 80 special defense, making it one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the game. It can tank hits, it's like no wall, but it's just one of the most naturally fat Pokemon. The close combats that you're throwing into this thing probably aren't going to one-shot it unless you're really invested, and that's despite them being super effective. It's only got 50 base speed, meaning that it's in a zone where both Trick Room and Tailwind are viable options, though Trick Room is largely preferred, and it's got a whopping 140 attack stat. That on its own is a recipe for a meta-defining Pokemon, but Ursaluna breaks the game in half when you count for the ability and move pool it was granted. Ursaluna will only ever run Guts as the ability, as this will grant it a 50% boost to its physical attack whenever it's statused, while also bypassing the attack nerf given to burn Pokemon. When you combine this ability with a Flame Orb and the move Facade, a normal type move which doubles in power when the user is statused, it's capable of one-shotting nearly every Pokemon in the game, with even resisting Pokemon having a chance to get knocked out. For reference, the previous strongest Facade user was Obstagoon, a Pokemon with only 90 base attack, because who would give 140 attack to a normal type with Guts and Facade? That's just absurd and kind of dumb. And if the opponent has a Ghost, Steel, or Rock type, Ursaluna can just switch to using Earthquake or Headlong Rush to board wipe or one-shot whatever is in front of it. Ursaluna has remained a staple of EGC since it was introduced, and its ability to function on so many team archetypes from Balance to Trick Room to Tailwind makes it a massive threat on par with Pokemon like Calyrex Ice at times. And that's just the base form. Ursaluna switches from a strength build to an intelligence build just by standing up on its hind legs and stargazing. Blood Moon Ursaluna boasts lesser overall bulk in just 113 HP, 120 defense, and 135 special defense. Its speed remains in that limbo area of 52, meaning that it can operate on both fast or slow teams, but it's given a more ridiculous tool to make up for not having Guts boosted Facade. Ursaluna Blood Moon has the move Blood Moon, a 140 base power special normal type move which only has the drawback of not being usable twice in a row, meaning it's basically just going to click Earth Power or Hyper Voice instead next turn. On top of this, it has the ability Mind's Eye, which allows for normal type and fighting type attacks to hit ghost types. This means that Blood Moon and Earth Power are perfect offensive stab options that can hit almost everything in the game. Like, the only things that can switch in on Ursaluna Blood Moon are levitating steel types, aka Bronzong, and even that doesn't like taking a Life Orb Terranormal Blood Moon. Ursaluna Blood Moon is just as threatening of a Pokemon as the base form, with it dominating nearly every format it's been allowed in, and frankly, there's no other Pokemon than these two who could top this list. But those are just my rankings. Do you agree or do you disagree? Did I shortchange some Pokemon in my rankings? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It'd mean the world to me. If you want to support me even further, you can check out my Patreon page or become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button down below. This gets you sneak peeks at future videos, access to bonus content, and even access to my supporter-only Discord server where you can hang out and team build with other community members. You also see your name at the end of all my videos, like all these lovely people. Special thanks to my most boosted supporters, Avatar67 and Club, for their generous pledges. Another way way to support me is to check out all the videos in the playlist on screen right now. I know you'll find something in there that you'll enjoy. Or you can tune into my YouTube live streams at 6 p.m. CST Monday through Friday. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.